afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome to this webinar, Unlocking Indonesia's Business Opportunities for Growth, organized together by UOB with Surya Cipta and Asagaf Hamza and Partners Law Firm. It is an honor for me, Samuel Houghton, from UOB Indonesia FDI Advisory, to be the host of this event. I hope you are all in your good health, as there is a Chinese saying, 健康是最大的财富. Health is over wealth. I wish everyone good health and ready to receive lots of insight from the speakers. I hope every one of you can hear my voice as I have started speaking. If you cannot, please ensure your speaker and your mic speaker are turned on accordingly, okay? All right. Today, we will have the market expert to discuss topics covering the nuances of doing business in Indonesia, cross-border financing solutions between mainland China and also Indonesia, and Indonesia regulatory and legal framework. Okay, take your first step towards unlocking Indonesia business opportunities for growth. Before we officially start the event, please allow me to inform every participant that you can choose to listen in English channel or Chinese channel, as some of our speakers will present in English and some also will speak in Chinese. So for the audience who need Chinese translation, please select and choose the Chinese interpretation channel. You can find it on the bottom of your screen. Yeah. And when a presenter presenting in Chinese and you need an English translation, likewise, please turn in the English channel. You can find the option, again, on the bottom line of the Zoom screen. And without further ado, it is my honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Jauhari Oratmangun, Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the People's Republic of China and Mongolia, to give his opening remarks. Excellency, the microphone is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all of you from Beijing. My dear friend, Mr. Peter Fu Mu Tan, President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Overseas Bank, UOB China's branch, distinguished speakers and participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon from Beijing. First of all, I would like to convey my heartfelt appreciation for being a part in the webinar theme, Unlocking the Ultimate Opportunities of Indonesia. I'm more than happy to share with you on how Indonesia becomes one of promising countries for doing business. My appreciation by all means also goes to the United Overseas Bank, China branch, for unremitting effort to collaborate with Indonesian Embassy in China to promote business and economic collaborative between both countries, China and Indonesia. More than 7 decades of bilateral relations have passed between Indonesia and China. It is worth to repeating that since 2nd October 2013, the two countries became, we call it, comprehensive strategic partnership. From 2005, we were the strategic partnership. So we elevate our relationships. Since then, a mountain of cooperation in various areas was formed since then. The cooperation between both has been solidified, cemented, after both became comprehensive strategic partnership in 2013 and succeeded to synergize Indonesia's Global Maritime Forum, GMF, and Belt and Road Initiative by President Xi back in 2018. And this is reflected in the 4 economic corridors in Indonesia. The first one is North Sumatra, developed as economic and business hub for ASEAN countries. North Kalimantan as an energy and mineral hub, in particular renewable energy. Bali as a high-tech and creative economic hub, and North Sulawesi as Pacific Rim Economic Hub. Other, we call it non-economic cooperation or projects, are Jakarta-Bandung High-Speed Railway. Hopefully, it will be inaugurated before the end of this year. Center of Technology Digital Development in Turtle Island in Bali. Hopefully, it will be inaugurated by July this year. And then 2 countries twin park between Fujian province and province of Central Java and Bangka Belitung in Indonesia, and many more projects. There are cooperation ranges from the development of Technopark, Industrial Park, Waste Treatment Project, Power Plant, Digitalization, 5G Transportation, Port, Special Economic Zone, Sister Port, Fisheries Industry, Medical Technology, to renewable and clean energy. This is in line as well with the theme of the Indonesian chairmanships of G20, in which we concentrate on 3 big issues: health infrastructure, renewable energy, and digitalization. The major relations are also reflected in the tremendous figures as follows. In trade relations, China is Indonesia's biggest trading partners, in which the two-way trade figure totaled 123.4 billion US dollar. This is based on the data released by the China Customs. And then the realization of the China investments in Indonesia last year, 3.2 billion US dollar. And then we see the improvement as well, the increase as well in the first quarter of 2022, in which total trade of both countries reached 32.76 billion US dollar, increased by 31.2%, and the realization of the investment reached 1.4 billion US dollar, increased by 40%. So let me give the reasons why you have to invest in Indonesia, the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Let me say a few words on that. Our GDP is already 1.2 trillion US dollar in 2021. That's the reason why we were the member of the G20. Our population is more than 270 million people, with 44% under 25, a young and growing workforce. And then we've been projected, hopefully we are still working hard for that, to become among the largest economy in 2045. 2045 is only 23 years from now. Think about China 23 years ago and what China has been developed so far for the last 20 years. Indonesia has also been working on creating new investor-friendly policies and reducing bureaucracy to attract more investment. And of course, Indonesia, the 4th most prospective investment destination, the biggest power of digitalization in the region, the 5th highest number of internet users globally, the 2nd most biodiverse country in the world, and then of course, global source of natural resources, geothermal, palm oil, rubber, tin, nickel, coffee, cacao, tea, etc. And back in the late 2020, we issued the Omnibus Law, in which to facilitate the conducive environment for the investment as well. There are special economic zones in Jakarta, many in Indonesia, many of them. And vis-a-vis China, we established the local currency settlement since last year, September last year. This is with a view to boost economic relation between 2 countries, and in particular between private or business people. We have welcomed the joint initiative by the Central Bank of Indonesia, and People's Bank of China, PBOC, to launch the framework for cooperation to promote the use of local currency for settlement, LCS, of bilateral trade and direct investment starting from September 6, 2021. We firmly believe that the LCS will bring a range of benefits, including more efficient transaction conversion costs, alternative export financing, direct investment opportunities in the local currency, alternative hedging instruments in the local currency, and diversification of currency exposure in transaction settlement. I think later on you will have a lot of discussion on this particular issue as well. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has demonstrated its resilience in coping with the economic impact of the pandemic by continuing to log positive signals in several economic indicators. To conclude, I would like to underline that you will never go wrong with doing business, especially investing in Indonesia. There are so much more potentials that we can show you here. So make use of this opportunity, visit Indonesia, explore Indonesia, and do business in Indonesia. We are here in China, embassy and consulate generals in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, and in Hong Kong as well, ready to link you with relevant institutions in Indonesia and make your business plan in Indonesia go smoothly. And of course, the UOB branch of China will play a catalytic role as well. Last but not least, I wish our today's webinar a big success, and all of you will take a productive and fruitful takeaways from this event. Terima kasih, xie xie. Thank you very much.
Excellency, thank you very much. Thank you so much for your welcome remarks and the warm welcome to all investors to come and explore the investment in Indonesia. Okay, now so I would like to invite all panels to take a group photo while we have Mr. Ambassador here. Please allow me to invite all panels to turn on the camera for a good and nice group photo taking. Can we have our operator to help to take the photo today? Okay, let me just count down 3, 2, 1. Okay, I hope it's taken. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, if you had any questions to the speakers, you can write on the Q&A and it will be addressed after 3 speakers will deliver their presentation. Thank you very much. And again, we will start to have our speakers. Yeah, and the first speaker will touch on investment and trade. He will deliver in Chinese. And so for those who need to listen in English interpretation, please select English channel now. So you can switch now. Yeah, every company will need banking services. How do you manage the capital injection and exchange the currency, as all transactions in Indonesia as a regulated must use rupiah. Last September 2021, UOB became the first Singapore bank designated as CNY and IDR, RMB and IDR appointed cross-currency dealers, ACCD, in China and Indonesia. So let's invite Mr. Mark Yang, Managing Director, Head of Global Market from UOB China, to share his expertise in how to maximize the power of this FX tool to deepen your business between China and Indonesia. Mr. Mark, the microphone is yours.
Thanks, Samuel. 首先感谢这个大会的邀请，然后呢，我也代表大华中国 UOB China， 然后向周浩利大使致以最真挚的问候。那么也是那个向在座的演讲嘉宾，还有我们尊贵客人那个祝以问好，也祝大伙身体健康，万事如意。因为我在上海已经在家里面工作了接近3个月时间了， 那个也是经历了很多事情。如果是有那个我们尊贵客人是来自于上海的话，那么也是再次问候，祝大伙身体健康啊，能够尽快复工复产。那也是借着那个周浩利大使刚才所提及的2点吧。第一个是中国与印尼与东南亚的双边贸易在过去几年那么有个迅速的发展。那么特别是在2020年、2021年，东盟呢变成中国最大贸易伙伴。那么印尼是异军突起，那个嘛有那个非常优异的成绩。第二个呢是在去年9月6号，像周浩利大使所提及的，2家央行呢批复了2个国家能够通过双边本地结算来那个进行双边国家的贸易投资的这个结算的服务。那其实给我们的投资者和企业带来极大的便利。那我现在进入我的主题，我把我的 PPT 打开啊，麻烦大伙等等啊，谢谢。Samuel, can you help me to share my screen, my PPT? Thank you.
Okay.
Because the host disabled participant screen sharing, I need your help. Thank you. 在 Samuel 那个操作这个PPT 这个展现给大伙的同时啊，我也跟大伙汇报一下。那么在2021年9月6号呢，人民银行与印尼的央行呢，在2个国家政府的支持下面呢，实现了那个中国第一个突破。那么中国以往是那个没有2个国家去批准这种那个双边货币的这个结算的服务的，那么只有那个货币互换。那么在印尼政府与中国政府的双边的那个友好的协商下面的话呢，是进行一个比较大的一个突破。那么在9月6号就那个允许了，就是2个国家商业银行那么提供这方面服务。这方面服务啊，它那个很特殊，不单单是一个那个can you put on the slide? Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Can you put let me try. Can I go to the next slide? Yeah, okay. Yep. Next slide, thank you. Okay. Maybe I mentioned some trade figure first. OK. 那么也是，我还是继续用中文跟大伙做汇报吧。那么在2020年的话呢，虽然呢全球经济受到这个疫情的影响，所以呢其实大部分的国家呢，它的贸易啊是那个萎缩的。但是呢，中国与东盟啊克服的那个各种各样困难，保持了一个逆势增长。那么东盟也是在2020年超越了欧盟与美国，变成中国最大贸易伙伴。那么今年特别可喜可贺的是，1月1号，那么 RCEP 区域全面经济伙伴关系协定正式生效，进一步加强了中国与东盟的双边贸易与投资，这是一个非常重要的事件。那我也跟大伙透个底啊，我跟周大使沟通过，他也是 RCEP 的专家。如果大伙有机会见到周大使的话，你可以向他请教。那么我们可以看到啊，在今年1到4月份，在这个 RCEP 的生效的背景下面，东盟与中国的双边贸易量啊还是迅速发展。那么特别呢，我想说一下呢，是这个印尼的双边的贸易量的增长达到接近26%，取得更加可喜的成绩。但是大伙不要那个低估了，在2021年，其实印尼与中国的双边的贸易增长是超过50%以上，按照美元口径的统计。那么你想想，在这个很大的增长基础上面，像今年的第1季度前4个月还接近26%，说明在 RCEP 的这个协定生效以后，中国与印尼的双边友好关系的大背景下面，中国企业跟印尼企业之间呢是有非常好的那个互动和合作的。OK, Samuel, next slide. Thank you. 那么在2021年9月6号，那么2个央行的话呢，就是批复了20家 商业银行，其中包括8家的中国的银行和12家印尼的银行，一起呢启动这个双边本币的结算的这个业务。那里面的话呢，包括什么一些工作呢？就是说，中国与印尼的企业可以在那个中国或者印尼开设印尼盾或者说人民币的这个银行账户，这是一个很大突破。因为印尼盾和人民币的话呢，在某种程度也是一个受限货币。那这也是为避免一些那个一些在市场波动比较情况下，那种汇率啊那个太大波动。那因此呢，两个央行是那个在对货币是有所控制的。但是基于在这个两个国家双边友好的合作的大背景下面，再加上两个央行的那个良好的合作的情况下，允许了这种账户的互相设立。那同时在这个基础上面的话呢，企业就可以开展人民币和印尼卢比的直接的这个结算兑换啊，用于贸易与投资方面的服务。那非常有幸的话，大华银行中国与大华银行印尼啊，就是这20家银行里面其中2家。Next slide, thank you. 那我们能提供一些什么服务呢？那我们就能提供我们那个做贸易企业里面的非常熟悉的即期的换汇、远期的套期保值、掉期，甚至是融资方面的交叉货币互换。那作为这个中国与印尼这个我们外汇交易非常活跃的一家银行，大华中国的话呢，非常有幸在9月6号我们开启的当天，我们做了第一笔的人民币印尼盾的交易啊，做了首笔。那当天呢，我们的交易量啊占了整个市场的1半以上。那么交易的类型包括即期，也帮助一些企业通过远期去锁定了这个汇率的风险。那么企业客户的话呢，我们是非常欢迎啊，他们来我们大华中国的各个分行来开设印尼盾的结算账户啊。Next slide, thank you. 那么与传统的这个模式相比较的话呢，这个 LCS 有些什么样一些这个优势呢？我们可以比照一下上下图。传统的模式的话呢，就是我们的客人呢，在中国，他要那个拿人民币换成美元，这跟国内的银行，国内银行呢把美元呢，然后汇到了印尼当地的银行，再把美元换成印尼的卢比。那么在这种情况下呢，要做2笔外汇交易，同时它有可能需要至少3到4天的结算时间。那么里面就凸显就是比较我们下图的话呢，你会发现呢，如果我们是通过这个 LCS 双边本币结算，那么我们的优势是非常明显的。客户在中国只要付人民币给大华银行中国或其他银行，他直接就可以购买印尼盾，就可以把印尼盾、印尼卢比直接付到印尼境内的银行或他的那个交易对方。那么我们发现上下2种模式比较，第2种模式的话只需要1次换汇，减少换汇成本。第2个加速了这个汇款的结算的时间。那么上面的话需要3到4天，下面的话呢，我们可能当天或1天就可以了。那么提高了效率。那么第3个的话呢，我想说就是说，节省了这个换汇期间的所产生的汇率风险。因为我们用人民币换成美元，美元换成印尼卢比的话，需要4天左右时间，很有可能汇率有大幅度的波动，对吧？但是像我们现在做的话，我们就一步到位，而且有很关键一点就是说，如果我们多花3天到4天时间，如果我们金额非常大的话呢，也会那个花费我们更多的融资成本。所以呢，就像周大使那所说的，其实 LCS 双边本币的这个这个结算呢，它有非常强的优点啊。OK， 我们再讲讲那个具体的案例啊。Next slide, thank you。那这个案例的话呢，是在今年年初我们做了一笔交易。那么这个企业的话，是中国一个非常出名的一个水产饲料的加工行业的龙头企业啊。其实，在东盟啊，已经设立很多工厂，包括在印尼，它现在已经有2家工厂了啊，还有在马来西亚 这个越南。那么这家企业在2021年底的话呢，获得了那个商务部发改委大约接近那个6000万人民币到印尼的投资吧，到印尼投资。那么这个客人当时呢就跟大华银行中国沟通好，然后呢觉得他想尝试一下，在这个直接投资情况下，用这个 LCS 进行这个进行一个购汇。那事实证明的话呢，客人发现这个效果非常好。为什么？首先，这个人民币去购买这个印尼盾啊，是印尼卢比是非常畅顺的，这第一点。第二点的话呢，客人的话呢，在当天在购买了印尼盾以后，就那个直接把钱汇到的他开在印尼的这个账户里面。那么当时的话呢，客人非常惊讶，当天这次的这个汇款非常顺利，只用了2个小时。也就是说，客人在大华中国购买印尼盾2个小时以后，钱就到了印尼境内的账户所以呢，那么客人的是非常满意。那么我们其实不单单是做了这个 LCS 的服务，我们印尼的这个同事，像 Samuel 就是我们这个主持人，那么和他的团队呢，也帮助我们客人呢，在那个印尼大华呢开设的账户，这账户也是1周之内就可以开好了。所以客人呢得到这一系列服务，得到客人的一致的认可。下一页，谢谢。Next slide。那第2页的话呢，是一家那个棕榈油的进口商，那么他就做的是一个那个非常常见的国际贸易。那么他也是在那个9月6号，当我们印尼盾跟人民币做交易那个启动的第1天他就尝试跟我们做这个交易。那客人给我们反馈也是非常那个满意的，因为呢，像这里面PPT 你们看到的，那么它的这个交易的时间和那个结算时间那个减少到了1天时间非常的顺利。而且呢，它的那个汇率的成本汇率的外汇风险也得到那个非常好的控制，也节省了外汇的成本OK， 下一页，谢谢。Next slide。那么这一笔的话，这个业务的话呢，是一个那个国内一个很出名的一个白色家电的出口商。那么出口这个这种那个电器到印尼市场。那印尼市场就像我们刚刚周大师所说的，人口庞大，是一个非常大的一个市场 ，GDP 那个国家 GDP 也是一个非常那个占先的一个国家。那么这家企业的话呢，在印尼呢是有一家销售公司。那么国内的母公司的话呢，把这个白色家电呢出口到印尼去，通过当地企业进行销售。那么因为这家企业的话呢，因为在印尼当地市场一般是收到印尼盾，那因为他们是签的那种长期的出口合约，所以呢母公司这边为了规避人民币跟印尼盾的这个汇率波动风险因此呢就跟大华银行呢就签了一个1年期的这个人民币对印尼盾的印尼卢比的这个远期销售合约，成功的去规避了这个价格风险。那么企业已经那个做了好几次的这个结算了，那么所有的那个结算那个收款那个都是非常顺利的这是我以上跟各位那个嘉宾还有尊贵客人汇报的3个产品方案。那么在这个基础上面的话呢，我们还会做更多的这个产品的研发，那么去支持中国与印尼的国际贸易与投资的这种结算这个。那么也next slide thank you。那么这是我本人的联系方式和我的同事的联系方式。那么也欢迎那个各位嘉宾和各位尊贵客人呢那个与我们联系，然后我们能提供更多的解决方案给大伙。那我和我的同事是关于这个金融市场的那个这个业务的专家。那么如果我们挪到下一页 ，next slide，thank you。那么我们2位副总 一个辅节地种和副业种，他们是呢作为这个 FDI 就是协助我们中国企业到印尼进行投资，然后进行国际贸易的专家。那么也欢迎各位嘉宾呢与我们的2位副总进行联系，然后去探索，然后呢在印尼这么庞大的市场的一个贸易的机会。那么因为时间有限了，我在这里再次代表大华银行中国与大华银行印尼呢，对朱大使对我们大华银行集团的支持表示衷心的感谢，也祝愿这次大会圆满成功，谢谢大家 ，Thank you。
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Very interesting to know the service UOB can offer. Now, let me invite our second speaker, Albert Hartanto, Project Officer of Surya Cipta. He will speak in English. So for those who need to listen in Chinese, please, you can select the Chinese language channel interpretation. So it is important for all investors who want to know more about setting up operation in Indonesia, looking for land for your projects. Albert will introduce Indonesia and West Java and its infrastructure in more specific. Please join me to welcome Albert Hartanto. Albert, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Pak Samuel. I'd like to take this opportunity to also thank the speakers and everyone, the attendees, for attending. As mentioned, for my part, I will be looking at Indonesia, its regions, and exploring why it may be the right place to be. Next slide, please. Okay. Let's start off with some statistics. As seen in the graphs here, Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia by area, by population, and by GDP. We also have the 4th largest population in the world, behind only China, India, and the United States. As Mr. Ambassador mentioned before, we have 270 million people. So looking at the trend moving forward, we can see that Indonesia is on track for growth in terms of both population and GDP. And these translates to opportunities in the country. Moving one step further into the trade value of Indonesia, one key observation here is that exports seems to be increasing faster than imports. This is also in line with the government's initiative to encourage locally produced goods. This supports the local economic growth while also building an ecosystem in which there is better efficiency for raw materials, cost of production, etc. For Indonesia, China is a very important ally. China is one of the primary contributors for both our imports and exports. As of Q1 2022, China makes up 13.2% of Indonesia's total foreign direct investment. Historically, the numbers have been continuously growing, and China's role as Indonesia's business partner has grown increasingly important. Now, China's biggest investment to Indonesia are in these following sectors: tourism, energy, minerals, metals, manufacturing, technology, media, telecommunication, and infrastructure. As expected, there was a sharp decline during the pandemic 2020 to 2021. Nonetheless, I am very optimistic going forward. I believe that China will continue to demonstrate strong growth as one of the leaders in technological innovation, such as EV, renewable energy, and Indonesia can be a partner where both parties assist and benefit from one another. Here is a quick overview on Indonesia's manufacturing sector. 13% of Indonesia's labor force are in manufacturing, in which there are several prominent industries, including food and beverage, textile and garment, followed by wood, leather, and tobacco. So Indonesia is relatively large by size. So for new investors, which area is the most suitable? To answer that question, that would depend on your industry and your specific priorities. For example, Central Java would have the lower wages, but West Java would have the higher population density and infrastructure. In this map, we are looking at the number of industrial estates worldwide, nationwide, just to see historically where the industries tend to be. And it points to a higher concentration in the western part of Java, coinciding with its economic status. Here is a graph that separates the industries according to their scale throughout the Java Island. Large industries refer to those with 100 employees or more, while medium industries refer to those with less than 100 but greater than 20 employees. As implied before, West Java has the largest number, but this may also be due to the better infrastructure considering the proximity with the capital of Jakarta. Jakarta is basically connected to West Java with many employers and employees commuting back and forth on a daily basis. Java is Indonesia's main island. More than half of the country's 270 million population resides in the island of Java, with the numbers again concentrated towards the western side, covering Banten, Jakarta, and the West Java province. West Java by itself is actually Indonesia's most populated province, with most of the population living between the two major cities of Jakarta and Bandung. This table is a more comprehensive breakdown, just to give you a better idea, detailing several information with regards to the labor, education level, wages, as well as the number of industrial estates and shipping ports in each of the Java province. Hopefully, this will give valuable insights that will help steer you towards the more suitable investment destination. The educational background of provinces may be particularly relevant, especially for those that rely on a larger number of skilled workers. Within the industry sector, for example, many employees have a higher education as their jobs require skills. For this analysis, we further segment the educational levels and also look at the number of schools. Unsurprisingly, Western Java again comes out on top, nearly doubling the amount of higher education graduates compared to Central and Eastern Java. Again, this is also attributed to the population and the number of schools in the region. Now, depending on the exact location, the minimum wage of each province can vary greatly. Minimum wage is adjusted annually based on each location's living costs. For West Java, Bekasi, Kerawang, and Bogor, they have the highest minimum wage, but it also implies a higher economic growth as the wages help with economic activity. The three regencies with the highest minimum wage here also contribute to the area's GDRP, adding up to approximately 50% of the total. As seen in the map, the areas that are closer to Jakarta tend to have a larger minimum wage. The areas Bekasi, Kerawang, and Purwakarta are known to host industries and larger businesses, and hence this stretch is also known as the industrial corridor. Usually, areas that appeals to businesses unfortunately also have a higher minimum wage. As the industrial corridor becomes increasingly saturated, labor and land will also become more and more expensive. As a result, there is a trend where the industrial corridor is transitioning, expanding further east to Subang. Subang is still competitive in terms of cost. The minimum wage is slightly above 3 million rupiah, and it is still accessible to major cities and given its proximity and infrastructure points. While on West Java, here is a quick view on the working age demographic. For this, I believe that the key takeaway here is that the labor force is dominated by the younger generation, mostly between the ages of 25 and 44. For companies that looks towards a younger workforce, there's an ample supply of labor here as well. We believe that access to vital infrastructure is also what makes a location strategic. Access to airports and shipping ports is especially important for business that plans to export. I'm going to use industrial estates in Kerawang and Subang as a reference point. From Jakarta to Kerawang, we have Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, which is about 90 minutes away. Tanjung Priok Airport is about 60 minutes away, and Halim Perdana Kusuma Airport is about 45 minutes away. From and to Subang, to each of these ports, it is an additional 30 minutes. However, Subang is closer to the new infrastructure projects in West Java, such as Kertajati Airport is just 60 minutes away, and with the new upcoming toll road, Patimban Seaport will just be 30 minutes away. On the other hand, for Kerawang, it will take 90 minutes to get to Kertajati Airport and 60 minutes to get to Patimban Seaport. In fact, the upcoming toll road to Patimban Seaport is represented by the blue line that's attached to Patimban Seaport on the map, and that will be connected to the existing toll road, the Tipali toll road, by an interchange in Subang Smartpolitan, the new integrated development in Subang. For the two new infrastructure projects, Patiman Seaport and Kertajati Airport, let me show a quick timeline for each of their development. For Patiman Seaport, phase 1 is already done. Currently, it has already been used to transport cars all around Indonesia, and it will continue developing until 2027. Upon the completion of phase 3, Seaport will support a cargo terminal of 7.5 million TEUs and 600,000 CBUs. Similarly, for Kertajati Airport, most of the initial infrastructure is already in place. However, the airport is more widely used for logistics and cargo flights instead of commercial flights. Kertajati Airport, along with the Patiman Seaport, is both projected to become the logistical hub of West Java. Infrastructure accessibility affects logistics costs. Shipping costs will vary according to the need of the company. However, here is just some information using China and the United States as an example. Comparing each logistics to and from West and Central Java for both outside and inside industrial estates. This is to provide you with an idea as to the kind of logistics costs you can expect in Indonesia. This chart represents the investment process that a new investor would have to go through to invest in Indonesia. I won't go into specific detail here, but for investors that are not that familiar with Indonesia, it would be beneficial to have an assistant, for example, from a landlord that would be willing to help in terms of planning, providing information, or bridging with necessary entities that will smoothen out the overall investment process. Lastly, here is some investment incentive and facilities. Again, I won't go through detail one by one, but this presentation will also be accessible to you and you may study them further at your convenience. Thank you.
Wow, very interesting presentation, Mr. Albert. I believe the first two presenters have attracted actually many questions from the audience today. Okay, we will now get into a focus topic which will be delivered by Asagaf Hamzah and Partners Law Firm. I'm glad to invite Ms. Nasli Palindungan Siregar. Nasli has over 20 years of experience in international tax, which consists of cross-border M&A, global business model optimization, and international tax advisory. Together with Nasli is Mr. Ahmad Maulana. Pak Alan specialized his practice in employment law. So his expertise in employment spans the full spectrum of labor-related issues, complex expatriate employment rules, and many more. Again, if you have questions, please post your questions on the Q&A section. Ibu Nasli and Pak Alan, the microphone is yours now. You're still muted, Ibu.
Thank you, Pak Samuel. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to tell a little bit about the tax structure for investment, which is commonly used for Chinese investor investing into Indonesia. And later on, my colleague will discuss the employment law. Let's get into the tax structure first. The general taxation obligation in Indonesia is the tax rate in the amount of 22%. This is the rate which is already reduced from the previous one, which is 25%. We also need to file the withholding tax return monthly, such as employee tax prepayment, and also it is a progressive rate from 5 to 35%. In addition, if the company has some transaction related to service and rental and so on, they need to file the withholding tax return. And then finally, you also need to remember the value-added tax, which is now at the 11% rate. Remember, this is a very new rate, which is already increased, and it will be increased again in 1st of January 2025 to 12%. If there is a dividend payment to the Chinese company, it will be subject to Indonesian Income Article 26 at the rate of 20%, which can be reduced by Chinese-Indonesia Tax Treaty to become 10%. And the interest payment to Chinese company, in case the Indonesian subsidiary need to have loan, it will be subject to 20% domestic rate and can be reduced by China-Indonesia Tax Treaty to become 10% rate. So let's come with the structure itself. Okay. This is a very simplified structure. The parents is the Chinese company, invest directly into Indonesian company. Now, let's take a look if we would like to make it a little bit more interesting. Another one. These are the structure of the Chinese company investing into Indonesia, but investing via holding company. There are 3 jurisdictions that we chose because they are the most commonly used. The first one is Malaysian holding company. The second one is Singaporean holding company. And the third one is Hong Kong holding company. As you can see, the Indonesian operating company is owned by Malaysian holding company or Singaporean holding company and Hong Kong holding company. So what are the difference between those 3 holding company? Let's take a look from the tax perspective. Okay. If we take a look, there are 3 items of taxable income that we would like to discuss. The first one is dividends. The second one is interest. And the third one is royalty. So if there is a dividend coming from Indonesia, going to China directly, based on the treaty, the rate is 10%. But if the dividend coming from Indonesia, going to Hong Kong, which is the jurisdiction of the holding company, the rate is only 5%. And if the dividend coming from Indonesia operating company, going to the Singapore holding company, the rate is 10%. And if there's a dividend coming from operating company to Malaysia holding company, the rate is 15%. For the interest, if you take a look the treaty between Indonesia and those countries, interest coming from Indonesian operating company to China, the treaty rate is 10%. And if it goes to the Hong Kong, the treaty rate is 10%. And if it goes to Singapore, the treaty rate is 10%. And if it goes to Malaysia, the treaty rate is 15%. The royalty. If the royalty coming from Indonesian entity go to China, the rate is 10%. If it go to Hong Kong holding company, the rate is 5%. If it goes to Singapore holding company, the rate is 15%. And if it go to Malaysia, the rate is 15%. This is what I'm talking about, that all the income coming from Indonesia operating company will go to the next level of the company, be it the parent entity, which is Chinese company, or be it the holding company. Now let's take a look if we have dividend coming from Indonesia. In our example, the Indonesian operating company is going to distribute $1,000 dividend. If $1,000 dividend is distributed to the parent company in China, then the dividend is going to be subject to withholding tax. So the withholding tax is $100, making the Chinese company will receive the dividend in the amount of $900 after the tax in Indonesia. So if we take a look, what happened if the Indonesian company is owned by the holding company in Hong Kong. When Indonesian company distributed dividend in the amount of $1,000, they have to pay tax in Indonesia, $50, such that when it arrives in Hong Kong, it's gonna be $950 after tax in Indonesia. And when Hong Kong distribute the dividend back to the parent company in China, the amount will become $902.5 US. Next, please. And what happens if the holding company is located in Singapore? If the dividend is distributed from Indonesian company going to the Singaporean holding company, it needs to pay withholding tax in Indonesia 10% based on the Indonesia-Singapore tax treaty, such that the amount of money arrived in Singapore is only $900. Then from Singapore, the dividend will be distributed to the parent Chinese company, and they need to be subject to the Singapore tax, such that the amount arrived at the parent Chinese company is $855 after tax paid in Singapore and Indonesia. And then finally, what happens if Indonesian company is owned by Malaysia holding company? If there is $1,000 dividend distribution coming from Indonesian operating company, at the level of Malaysian holding company, it needs to pay $150 of withholding tax in Indonesia, such that at the hand of the Malaysian holding company, the dividend is only $850. And then when it finally arrives at the Chinese parent company, the total dividend is going to be at $150. So those are the difference between variety of holding company that are commonly used for investment into Indonesia from Chinese company as the parent entity. The decision whether you're going to choose which holding company jurisdiction depend on your business needs. Because depending on whatever it is, all holding company needs to have business purpose and also need to have substance. Indonesian tax office will not allow to use the treaty if the holding company is not considered a very active holding company. Therefore, if you want to know further, let us know. We are more than happy to give you further information which holding company will be suitable to your business. Thank you. This is a brief analysis from tax perspective. And now I'm going to let our colleague, Mr. Ahmad Maulana, on employment law.
Thank you very much, Ibu Nazli. I'm going to start to provide you with a very brief overview on the Indonesian employment law landscape. Looking at Indonesian employment law, there are three main references that we need to be aware of. First, obviously, the employment agreement itself. Employment agreement under Indonesian law, it's normally quite simple. It mainly consists of provisions that is applicable uniquely for each particular person. While the other terms and conditions of employment that goes into all employees within a company will be included in the what we call company regulation, or globally normally referred to as employee handbook. Employee handbook can also be transformed into a collective labor agreement whenever in a particular company there's a labor union exists and the labor union decide to represent the company, to represent the employee to negotiate the terms in the company regulation. Then it becomes a collective labor agreement. The third one, and the most common one, this will applicable to all the workforces in Indonesia, which is the employment law itself. Quite similar with China. Indonesia is also a civil law country. So we use laws and regulation as the main reference. We do not have a stare decisis principle. So precedents do exist, but normally used by courts as an additional reference should something found not clearly stipulated under the existing laws. Next. Moving on to the type of agreement, we have two types of employment agreement: the permanent employment agreement and fixed term or non-permanent agreement. Next. As we can see, these are the main features of each type of the agreement. One of the main thing that we need to be aware when we talk about fixed term agreement, fixed term employment agreement, normally understood as the scheme that offer more flexibility, but the law provide a strict limitation on the maximum period that can be applied to fixed term employment, which is 5 years. Employment agreement can also be regulated to last as long as the existence of a specific project, as long as the project shall not exceed 5 years period. Only fixed terms employment need to be made in writing, although permanent employment agreement also recommended to be made in writing. And for fixed term employment agreement, there's no possibility to have probationary period, as those will only exist in the permanent employment scheme. Next. Understand that whenever we are talking about possibility for a foreign direct investment, we also talk about the possibility to employ foreign workers, because most of the foreign direct investment companies in Indonesia would want to have a foreigner to basically work in Indonesian entities, to transfer knowledge, to basically to pass on the policies and all the goodwills of the companies. Recently in end of 2020, the government issued the job creation law, which basically provide a significant changes to the Indonesian employment law. And mostly the changes put the regulation in a much more relaxed manner in favor of the business players. So we can see in the screen currently the licensing process to employ foreign workers is much simplified, just to include 3 major simple steps. Next. Obviously, if we talk about employment, we want to know whether we have a safe exit route in the event that the employment relationship is not going well and therefore need to be ended. We talk about the fixed term employment agreement. There are several consequences that will occur in the event of early termination of a fixed term employment. And even if an employment ended because the lapse of the agreed service period, still there are compensation need to be made to the departing employees. The amount is relatively small. For each service period, the amount of compensation, post-employment compensation, would be 1 month's salary. Next. Other than the compensation, there are also potential penalties that can be imposed for early termination, which is the obligation to pay for the remaining balance of the contract value if the termination initiated by the company. Next. And that's for the fixed term employment. And these lists are for the termination of permanent employment. If we can draw your attention to the first point in the column on the left, we see that Indonesia provide a very long sick leave. Some companies ask us on whether or not it is possible to apply for a specific period for sick leave. In Indonesia, employees are allowed to have sick leave up to 12 months period. Obviously, there are several consequences as well. There are several points within the 12 months period where the salary can be decreased, and the medical condition also need to be certified by health professional. Next. These are the other potential grounds for termination. If we can look at the last point of the right column, the labor law basically provide the space for the company to come up with their own unique regulation to to be made as the basis for termination, because the law and the government acknowledge that some industries are unique, some behavior, some misconduct can be considered more severe in one company compared to the other company who's having business in the other industry. So that's why the company regulation or the employee handbook that we discussed earlier may provide these additional grounds for either disciplinary action or ground for termination. Next. And then what happened if the termination conducted and then disputed by the employees? These are the steps of labor dispute settlement process. There are stages, and these stages need to be taken sequentially. We need to try to resolve any dispute through bipartite forum within the company. If that fails, mediation need to be conducted, facilitated by the local manpower office. If there's no settlement at this point, then the process can be continued into the labor court. Labor court decision will be subject to one final appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decision will be final and binding. We do understand that this is very brief. There may be a lot of questions that you may have in mind. We can have a discussion further during this session, or we can discuss further. You may contact us in the contact details that we will provide you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much again to Ibu Nasli and also Pak Alan. All the presentation and also all the materials delivered here are also detailed and so specific, and all speakers are so generous. Those who need the presentation material shared by the speakers, you can contact the party that invite you to register yourself to get the copies of the presentation material. Okay, and now let us attend to the Q&A. Yeah, all panels will be available, ready to take any questions. So let us check to the questions and answer side. Okay, we have one question here. Why or how is it possible that under LCS, the CNY IDR transaction can be made just in one day? Other than UOB, is there any other bank can do this? I think this question goes to Mr. Mark Yang. Mr. Mark?
Okay, first Samuel. Okay, got it. 1 second. First, can you hear me? Hello? Samuel, can you hear me? Okay, just want to make sure, and then oh yeah, okay. 我还是用中文回答吧，就是那个嘛，根据 Samuel 的问题，就是说为什么呢？ 就是在 LCS 双边本币结算的这个情况下，人民币与印尼盾的结算能够在一天完成。这一点的话呢，它有它的这个很特殊地方。为什么呢？因为大华银行中国与大华银行印尼啊，它都是 LCS 的这个双边本币结算的这个成员。另外一个呢，大华银行中国与大华银行印尼呢，他们都是那个有这种结算的这种通道。那因此呢，一旦人民币购买了印尼盾，那么我们就可以通过银行的这个内部的系统啊，把这个印尼盾呢从中国支付到印尼去，也可以呢，或者说如果是我们有企业可能在印尼购买的人民币销售印尼盾，它同样可以把人民币从印尼汇到中国它的人民币账户。那因此呢，就是那个我们能实现在一天之内进行这个结算，甚至的话呢，像我刚才做的这个报告，我们曾经试到最快的记录是2个小时就可以把在中国购买的印尼盾能够汇到印尼的企业的账户上面这个所以它是基于这个 LCS 的这个基本协议上面，2个央行给予2个地方的商业银行的一个极大的一个便利。那么我还是想在那个着重的那个强调，它的确会帮助企业节省那个大量的融资成本因为如果你是在那个早上购买印尼盾，下午就可以汇到印尼去的话，你就可以开始生息了那个你的印尼盾账户。所以呢，那个既可以规避汇率风险，同时又可以节省这个融资成本。好 ，OK， 谢谢 Samuel，Thank you。
Thank you, Mark. I hope you can hear me, everyone. We still have some other questions from anonymous attendee regarding labor. I think this question goes to Pak Alan. Regarding labor, if an employee works overtime during weekend or holiday, can the company provide another rest day for him/her instead of overtime payroll? Yeah, maybe you will take this question first, Pak Alan.
Recording in progress.
Yes, Pak Alan.
Yes, thank you very much, Samuel. Sorry, we're still on mute. Yes, the basic norm is basically to provide 40 working hours per week, which can be divided into 8 hours working for 5 working days per week, or 7 hours per day if 7 days working hours, 7 days working in 1 week. So that's the main norm, which basically provide flexibilities for companies to set out working days. We understand that some industries, some manufacturing process would require a 24/7 activity in their premises. And in that case, the law actually allows employers to require the employees working during the holiday, as long as we are maintaining the working hours within the allowable time space as we discussed earlier. So say if we require them to work on Sunday or Saturday, as long as we provide days off within the week and the whole week does not exceed 40 working hours, that is fine. The employee can still be paid in their normal salary without adding in some overtime payment. I hope this answers your questions.
Thank you so much, Pak Alan. I believe that answered the questions. Okay, we have another questions. Perhaps this will go to Surya Cipta, and I think there are some interest from some automotive players here. So which of the 2 seaports, Tanjung Priok or Patimban, would be more suitable for automotive exports for those in industrial area around Jakarta? Perhaps Albert, can you take this question?
Okay, so thank you for the question. So most of the automotive manufacturers now, they are in Cikarang, Kerawang, and Subang areas, I would say. So I previously said that these are part of the industrial corridor, but locally we also call this the automotive corridor, because this is where the vast majority of Indonesia's automotive manufacturing are. So right now, there is still a limited access to Patimban. There are still certain automotive players that manage to utilize Patimban, but in terms of export, it is still limited access. And the direct toll access to the seaport itself is not yet completed. So presently, Tanjung Priok is still the dominant seaport.
All right,
However,
thanks, Albert.
as mentioned before, upon completion of the Patimban CB, the CBU capacity will be 600,000 by 2027, which is twice as much as Tanjung Priok. And we looked at the distance from the automotive manufacturers to the two seaports, and Patimban will definitely be the preferred option down the line in a few years. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you so much. And there is another question came to me. So this question goes to Surya Cipta. So is the industrial estate suitable to accommodate battery recycling industry? Can you share info on government's regulations on export-import of hazardous waste? I think, Albert, can you take the questions of is the industrial estate suitable to accommodate battery recycling industry? Perhaps the second question, I'm not sure whether HP can help to help on the any government regulations on export-import of hazardous waste.
Yeah, actually, we're open to discussion. I think it also depends on exactly what kind of hazardous waste or how the battery exactly is being recycled. But Subang Smartpolitan, the concept itself is smart and sustainable. So anything that has to do with innovation, future industries, especially batteries, it may seem with recycling or hazardous, but we're actually open and we'll still be willing to have conversations, and hopefully
Hi, Albert. Okay. Sorry, I just missed the last slide. So you have answered the questions, yeah. All right.
Yeah, hopefully that clears it up. Yes.
Okay. For the participants who asked that questions about that, perhaps I hope that answered your questions on any specific government regulations on export-import of hazardous waste. I'm not sure whether our colleagues from AHP can help to take these questions.
I can just give you a little bit of flavor, Samuel. Hazardous waste has been hotly debated whether it is something that Indonesia need to either import or export because of many of the consequences, health consequences. There has been some idea coming from environmental agency in particular to how to reduce the waste by exporting some of the hazardous waste from Indonesian industrial estate. But until now, it has not come up to a regulation or even a law how to do that and the procedure how to export the hazardous waste. However, I heard that many lobbyists who really wants to make it happen really work hard on it.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu, for the answers. I think that is quite give some explanation on the export and import of hazardous materials. Okay, I think is just one last questions that we can address for now, due to the time constraint. Okay, this came from the earlier party who actually asked the questions. I can't hear the answer from the first question. So, okay. So perhaps Mark, we still need you to explain. The first question went to you on why it can be done in one day. Perhaps you can repeat your answer to all the audience.
Okay, Samuel, that's okay. Can you hear me, my friend?
Yes,
Yeah?
we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay. Now I think I speak in Chinese again. Okay, if you guys don't mind. Okay, just
Okay.
yes, and 关于为什么这个印尼盾和人民币啊，它能够一天能够进行结算，那么它的确是就像我刚才所说的，因为两个央行啊，他们那个签了这个协议以后，它就允许了我们的企业可以在中国开这个印尼盾账户，同时也可以允许企业在印尼开人民币账户。那么开这个印尼盾账户的话呢，没有这个 LCS 这个协议的话是不允许的。那么开的这个这个印尼盾账户也就说明，我们企业在中国去购买印尼盾，那么就是那个就是那个就非常的容易了。购买印尼盾以后呢，从它的这个印尼盾账户直接转到企业那个在印尼的子公司的印尼盾账户，或者说它的这个合作方的印尼盾账户的话呢，我们就利用了大华印尼与中国印尼的这个两个银行之间的那种内部的这个合作的这种通道。那么因为我们都是那个同一个集团下面的银行嘛，那么所以呢就能够迅速的把钱呢从中国转到印尼去。同样对于人民币也是一样的那个情况。如果是有企业在印尼，他把印尼盾销售的换成人民币，人民币从印尼转到中国来也是非常迅速的。我想再说一下，就是它这个时间一天其实是我们觉得是比较长的。我们其实最快能达到2个小时之内就把钱转过去了。当然要那个企业要配合好，然后呢银行也要配合好，而且相关的文件也一定是在合法合规的情况下，那我们就往这个2个小时啊去努力是有这机会的啊。但是这个东西不敢保证，但是一天之内的机会是非常大的啊。当然我觉得因为现在上海疫情的话呢，一天之内的话呢会有些困难了，但是我觉得不是一天。那么那个 T+1也是可以的。如果真的是企业想在一天之内实现这个汇款的话呢，就提前那个把这种文件呢交给我们那个银行的同事，因为在上海这个疫情下面封城的情况下，那么有些操作啊，我们也要去管理好风险。所以呢，但我相信，当这个上海这个封城结束了以后呢，我们企业去享受这种 T+0这种便捷的服务。那个机会是非常大的。Okay, Samuel, I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
谢谢，非常感谢茂阳。I think yes, I think that answered the questions from the party who raised that questions. Again, I believe there are no more questions that I can see for now. However, please, I think all the speakers has generously put their contact details and even their email address and also their contact numbers. So for those of any participants who would like to ask further detailed questions, please feel free to contact UOB, Surya Cipta, and also Azagab Hamsab and Partners AHP law firm. So again, we have come to the end of the webinar. Please again join me to thank His Excellency Ambassador Jauhari Ratmangun and all speakers today for the wonderful sharing, and thank you to all participants for your attention, and we look forward to receiving you in Indonesia. Welcome to invest in Indonesia. Thank you very much.